Stormwings gather over Norska. Mistrust and rivalry between the Skaven under Empire and the one place they can't dig threatens to break and flood the world in a tide of total war. On one side, the glittering hosts of Ulthuan, led by Eltharion the Grim. On the other side, the ninja rats of Clan Eshin. Master Splinter and his team of Ratman assassins are on the prowl once more. We're back on Warhammer 2, and I am facing down the mighty Falcon, who has blessed us with quite the spicy build. I am playing as the Azure, and the Grim Warden will be my legendary lord, mounted on his trusty griffin, Stormwing. He is incredibly overpriced, and very rarely worth the cost you sink into him, but that doesn't mean he's bad in terms of pure combat performance. He's still a big scary monster with cheap spammable spells, solid items, and some interesting synergy with Phoenixes. Apotheosis, Hand of Glory, Fang Sword, and the Helm of Ivres, which will automatically trigger Fiery Rebirth for Moltres if you time it correctly, so that's why we decided to bring that. And basically make the bird unbreakable and unkillable for 17 seconds, and that guarantees the burst heal when it's about to die. Remember, you can miscast on the reincarnation, and then it kind of just fizzles away, and you don't get the cool Phoenix stuff, so we want that. There are absolutely better, more cost-efficient lore choices here, like any Archmage on an Eagle would probably be better in this matchup, but we'll see what the Warden can do against a Clan Eshin Horde. The rest of the build is 2 Rangers, Eltharion Reavers, stacking up on the light cav because you need things to throw into the meat grinder to buy you some space and time, a unit of Silver Helms, and 4 regiments of Shadow Warriors, which are a great unit in general, but amazing versus Skaven. Their ability to kite, deal with low armor targets, fire all their ammo, and then still beat the crap out of lower and mid-tier Skaven units in melee means they're pretty much the perfect package at 850 gold. But if they don't do well, High Elves are in for a rough time in this one, so a lot of pressure for them. They need to put the team on their back, essentially. Arcane Phoenix is the other centerpiece unit. As we said, a lot of synergy with the Helm of Ivres, and Ember Storm provides some fantastic wave clear if the Ratmen get a little bit too blobby in their swarms. Just perch atop a formation, then drop the Flame Tornado and watch the fireworks unfold. Really good unit, and obvious power creep compared to the Flamespire and Frostheart Phoenixes that came out when the game first released. Across the way, the hated Falcon marches with his stinky rats, horde of Night Runners and Vanguard, some Gutter Runners with poison as well, all of them rocking Shuriken so they can fire in a 360-degree arc, and a hit squad made up of, you guessed it, Deathmaster Snikch and an assassin, fully kitted out with Rival Hide Talisman and Assassin's Trophy. The Deathmaster has Whirl of Weeping Blades and his Sigil, which is really what makes things terrifying for Lords. He gives you the Stink Eye, he nets you in place, then Rat Ogres and his burst damage pound your ass into submission. He is supported by Vistron's Death Squad, the Death Runner Regiment of Renown, and the Pit Fighters of Hell's Deep, which are a very versatile Rat Ogre unit that also get additional physical resist and better melee stats, I think, the longer they are in melee. Quite brutal in that kind of scenario. Eshin Sorcerer with Skitterleap, Warp Stars, and Black Whirlwind, and then a bunch more slaves, Rat Ogres, and Eshin Triads with their halberds or guandos, essentially, and their Weeping Blades, which will cut armor in half once they start slicing you up. So yeah, a full Ninja Rat army, and that provides some interesting challenges for these Shadow Warriors, because they can't shoot what they can't see. And this is Falcon, so he's probably not going to let his Rat Ogres get shot up for free either. The game plan on my end, of course, is to play the keep away game, send in a Ranger or Eltharion Reaver to buy time and space when necessary, when the Eshin squad catches up to me, but for the most part, give them as wide a berth as possible and shoot them to pieces with my superior range. As I said though, Eshin likes to be invisible, which makes shooting them hard, and they all have 20% physical resist, so they can be surprisingly resilient against missile fire too. Some nice dodging at the start, avoiding the worst of those opening volleys, and the Skaven are setting up to do something very sneaky. You see how they're shifting over to the left? Well, once they do that and get outside the Shadow Warrior unit on the end, they can then push forward at the edges, which creates kind of a horseshoe shape around that unit, which can screw up their pathfinding on skirmish mode. So that delay will mean they sit in the pocket too long and get shredded by shuriken volleys from all kinds of different angles with those runners firing in. Now, obvious micro mistake there. Typically, it's fine to leave your Shadow Warriors on skirmish mode, but there are ways to game the system a bit if you're on the other end and punish that kind of play, and that was very nicely played there. Now, it's not going to end up being too disastrous. Only ended up losing 14 models on those Shadow Warriors, so most of their firepower is still intact. Remember that when you lose a model in an archer unit, you lose all the ammo associated with that as well. That was not true back in the Medieval 2 days. It's only true in some of the more newer Total War games, but if that Shadow War unit had routed and died, that would have been really bad to start this game. I wouldn't say it's like an automatic loss if that happens, but you really need as much ammo as possible to get through all this dodge chance, the physical resist, the 20% PR that each of these Eshin units have. There's a lot of units on the field, and they're, as I said, surprisingly tanky to focus fire. So in a scenario where your margin for error is relatively small because you're up against a good player, got to make sure your Shadow Warriors stay alive, and thankfully they are still online and kicking. So backing up, making sure we don't commit into melee anytime soon, but a couple units might have to get thrown in here to slow down the onrushing horde. There's a lot of fast units on the other side of the field, so Eltharion Reavers are nice because they provide some mass, some speed. You can spam them, and if they end up dying, it's not a big loss. They only cost 550 gold, and they have the ability to run down gutter runners and do some damage to the skirmish units on the other side as well. Now, the assassin I think he bit off a bit more than he could chew there. He was going after these Shadow Warriors, probably a little bit of a micro mistake, a little bit of rush probably on both our sides, to be honest. And the assassin down to half HP. Arcane Phoenix got a couple nice chunks out of him. And there's an opening on the Eshin right that Reavers and Rangers will look to exploit. Committing hard, clear out some of the chaff and skirmishers, while the Shadow Warriors and Cav on the other flank continue their fighting retreat, rolling back and avoiding the crushing mass of that Rat Ogre Death Squad. Black Whirlwind from the Eshin Sorcerer winding up, and I could have sworn on me mum that Vortex did literally 0 damage. I would have bet the house that it had 0 damage component and was only meant for disrupting and slowing, which, to be fair, made it kind of bad, but either they changed it without my knowledge or I'm just crazy and stupid, because it is definitely ripping some knife ears up, and I mean, it's one of the coolest spells in the game, so I'm happy to see it regardless. But Eshin Sorcerer will rack up 30 kills from that spell and slow down the aggression from the High Elves over on the Eshin right flank. Even the Deathmaster and his assassin getting stuck in there and pushing the Rangers and Eltharion Reavers back. More Silverhelms charging up the center, but deciding they don't really want to commit to a fight with Eshin Triads, which is probably a good idea, especially with Rat Ogres so close. And it's tough in this scenario because it's really hard to judge when Eltharion and the Phoenix are actually safe to go in. It's very easy to lose track of where Snikch and his assassin are, and if the birds land in the wrong spot, they get sigiled, ganked, and potentially surrounded by Rat Ogres, at which point there's a good chance they won't tank off again. In this scenario, though, Deathmaster is on the other side of the field. Eltharion and the Arcane Phoenix are good to commit, and with the help of the Light Cav, which took the full charge there, which is not ideal, Rat Ogres played that quite smartly. They charged through the birds because they realized a full surround off on them at this point wouldn't matter. They don't have enough support from Deathmaster to kill off the Griffin or the Arcane Phoenix anyway, so they charged through and killed what they could, which was dealing a lot of damage to the Silverhelms and the Eltharion Reavers. So balance bar maybe a teeny bit in favor of Clan Eshin at the moment, but none of the Shadow Warriors have died, at least no unit has died yet, and they've still got some ammunition and they're doing a lot of damage to this low armor front line. Rat Ogres are being very smart though. They're positioned far in the back and only charging forward when the Shadow Warriors don't have an easy line of sight to pincushion the hell out of them, and ideally that is what the Shadow Warriors would love to be shooting at. If they could take down those pit fighters of Hell's Deep who are at full HP at the moment, that would be the ideal scenario, but the Death Runners were also a good target, as are the Triads. They can shoot into the Night Runners, not a terrible idea there either. Really the only thing they don't want to be shooting at are the Slaves, but here comes the assault once more. Clan Eshin is grouped up and ready for round 2, or is it 3 at this point? More Warp Stars. Naruto'd 4th from the Eshin Sorcerer. That's an AP-focused magic missile that does a little bit of damage. It's really not very expensive and not particularly impactful either, but it's spammable, and it'll chunk you down over time, but Eltharion has his ways of dealing with that, and Apotheosis is the big one 480 HP heal is nice to send away of the Arcane Phoenix or of his Griffin Stormwing. Eltharion Reaver stayed in the pocket there a little bit too long. Micro stretch thin here against Falcon. He knows what he's doing, and he's putting a lot of pressure on my army. But we're still in this game, and if a couple more Rat Ogres can get picked off while they're kind of isolated from the rest of the group, might be able to turn things here, because remember, Eshin wants to stay close together and compact, which makes them pretty susceptible to something like that Ember Storm from the Arcane Phoenix, which will tear up all of these units. The Slaves, the Gunner Runners, the Night Runners, and the Death Runners will all get absolutely pooped on by that Flaming Vortex. Eltharion and the Arcane Phoenix pulling out just in time, and this is why you bring the Cav. Basically gives them a shield so they can pull away, and yeah, you'll have to sacrifice some models on your cavalry units, but that is very much worth keeping your Arcane Phoenix or Griffin alive. And yes, indeed, here comes the Ember Storm right in the middle of the army, but Falcon was waiting for it. He knew what was on the way, and a lesser player would have probably gotten absolutely shish kebab by that vortex. Maybe lost 100, 150 models there. Falcon saw it coming and got most of his units out of the way in time. Probably ended up losing 30 or 40 instead. So if you want to talk about situational awareness and game sense, go back another 15 seconds or so and watch as his army starts moving as the Arcane Phoenix makes its way over to the blob. He saw it coming. Very impressive play there to dodge that. It could have really hurt him if a good Arcane Phoenix Ember Storm had torn up a good chunk of his army, because the Black is starting to get torn up too. Like, their army is in tatters at the moment, but the High Elves are having to commit. All their Shadow Warriors are out of ammunition. Didn't shoot up the Pit Fighters of Hell's Deep much, and that could be a game changer in and of itself. A powerful Regiment of Renown that doesn't have to worry about getting shot up, which is really its hard counter. Shadow Warriors getting good volleys into them is probably the fastest, most efficient way to clear them off the field. There's no way to shoot them at this point because there's no more ammo. So the fact that they're in melee, beating up on Shadow Warriors and tattered Eltharion Reavers and Silver Helms, without having lost much HP, is definitely important if you're on the Eshin side. But balance bar is still close to even, maybe a little bit in favor of Eshin at the moment. Deathmaster Sigil on Eltharion the Grim. Apotheosis to heal himself up in that fight. Arcane Phoenix coming down alongside the Griffin, and the Birds of Prey are on the hunt and dealing with the Goon Squad, Pit Fighters of Hell's Deep, Snikch, and the Assassin. And all the buffs and debuffs are popping off now. Assassin's Trophy, Hand of Glory, Rival Hide Talisman for the minus 40 melee attack in an AoE, which is game-changing in those kind of duels. That's why you bring it. Makes it really hard to fight Snikch in that kind of scenario, especially when it's all kicked off by a nice net. Arcane Phoenix should be able to pull away now, though. No more nets to tie them down, and the Pit Fighters are being surrounded. Shadow Warriors are making their impact felt in melee. They've got great stats, like 39 melee attack, 38 or 37 melee defense, so better than many other infantry regiments. But they're not particularly tanky either. And when they're up against Vistron's Death Squad with all that bonus versus infantry and all that melee prowess, and of course Snikch in there too, you can see the melee troops on the Azure side are beginning to waver and crumble, especially now that the Sumos, the monstrous infantry, are charging in from the flank and dropping the hammer fists. The tides are changing, and it's going to be up to the Arcane Phoenix and to Eltharion to carry this, because the High Elf infantry is, well, they're red mist at this point. It's getting brutal down there. Bodies littering the battlefield. And it's getting nasty for the Azure for sure. So what do they do to crawl their way back into this game? Well, pick off those isolated targets. Triads are a good pick for sure. They're Guando in a late game scenario. Lowering Eltharion's armor by half would be a problem, so if they can pick them, that would be great. And picking the Rat Ogres so that their mass can no longer surround the birds is also a big deal as well. There are a few more regiments of Light Cav, only barely hanging on by shreds at this point, but they are still alive, and that means they have ground troops, so they can bide their time, send some more Apotheosis heals the way of Stormwing and of that Arcane Phoenix, and get ready for the final showdown. An Ember Storm could be enough to clear up half this infantry if Falcon slips up and blobs a little bit too much. So we'll see what happens here. Basically, you're going to use the Cav to try to force that blob and then get the Arcane Phoenix above. Maybe bait him into thinking it's about to land and then pull up at the last moment and drop the Flame Tornado and see what that can do. They are fighting Skaven, not exactly known for their fantastic leadership. Terror Bomb could be imminent if things fall into place. So, Eltharion leading the charge, or baiting the charge anyway. Silver Helms and the remnants of the Illyrian Reaver archers, or Illyrian Reavers rather, and then the Flamestorm dropping in from above. That was a good one. A lot of wavering on the Eshin side. Some routes for sure. And yeah, the Phoenix rocketing up over 100 kills. But Stormwing is in the thick of it now, surrounded by Eshin Triad, surrounded by Rat Ogres, the Pit Fighters of Hell's Deep, and the rest of the Goon Squad. And everything has to commit now because there's no more foot troops on the Elven side. It is up to the birds, and they've got to fight a bunch of Guando infantry, Rat Ogres, Death Runners, and a bunch of things that are sundering their armor by 50%. Yeah, this fight's probably not going to go well for them unless that Arcane Phoenix gets a timely heal. Hand of Glory and Assassin's Trophy counteracting each other, but still lowering the melee defense of Eltharion. He's out of the fight now, leaving the Phoenix in the thick of it, and this is where you pop that Helm of Yvresse, but army loss is kicking in. So, entities cannot die while that is active. Unbreakable makes sure that that Fiery Rebirth kicks in and explodes a huge section of the Skaven horde. He's up over 150 kills now, and that low Skaven morale does not appreciate that. Wavering and a mass rout kicking in, but will it be enough and in time? Unbreakable will wear off on the Arcane Phoenix, and that is enough for Deathmaster Snikch and Clan Eshin to take the field. Got pretty spicy and close at the end there, though. The Ember Storm, followed by that Fiery Rebirth that killed a very large section of the remaining Skaven infantry, made things pretty caliente. So the Shadow Warriors were great this game. Bunch of them up over 130 kills. Damage value all across the board, over 1,000. So they are fantastic here. I wouldn't say target prioritization was bad there by any means, but didn't quite get to shoot the Rat Ogres as much as I would have liked. And if I'd been able to shoot those Pit Fighters of Hell's Deep, maybe could have been a different battle. Eltharion is just not good, at least against Clan Eshin. He really isn't. He's just way too expensive. He's 2,700 gold before he's even fully kitted out. He is not worth that. He simply is not worth that. He is not a terrible combatant, and yes, he brings the hybrid specialization that comes from, you know, allowing him to cast while killing things in melee too. So it's not that he's a terrible lord, he's just way overpriced for what he does and for the lore of magic that he has. 642 damage value there is a little bit embarrassing. But then again, if I had gone for an Archmage on an Eagle with the Armor of the Stars for that invisibility, you're going to get a lot more value and a lot more cost efficiency that way. So just wanted to see how Eltharion did, and the answer was not great, but I had fun using him, and that Helm of Yvresse synergy with the Phoenix was cool. So was glad I brought him anyway. Arcane Phoenix was awesome, but at the end of the day, Falcon knows how to handle a build like this one, and even though it got very close at the end there, he had more than enough plays to carry him to victory, and yeah, he's just a really good player. So hope you guys enjoyed that one, and you will probably be seeing more from our matchups very soon. And let me know if there are any factions you would like to see in the coming days. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one. Kenny Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.